categorizations of the attributes. The different categories that the scholars have given to the attributes of Allah Ta'ala. The author says, there are attributes that are considered inclusive of all of his attributes, such as uluhiyyah, which is also called ilahiyyah, that's Godhood itself, and kibriya, glory or bestness or awesomeness, and azama, which is greatness. All of these attributes are the same. The attribute of Godhood. His kibriya, it refers in the end to his attribute of Godhood. And his azama, his greatness, it refers in the end to his attribute of Godhood. Allah's wujud, his existence, is called sifat nafsiyyah, the self attribute, because nothing is conceived without conceiving this attribute. That's why the scholars usually start with this attribute of existence when they want to tell the 13 attributes, because it's most sensible to start there. It's most sensible to start there because nothing is conceived without conceiving this attribute. Why start with power or life or hearing before existence, which some people would do? If you test a person, have you memorized the 13 attributes? So many times they're just going to start saying them randomly. They don't have them arranged in any way in their mind, and they're just trying to pull them out. Yani, it's not memorized very well. So they would say, yeah, 13, power, everlastingness, speech, existence, like this. Although there is no necessary sequence to the 13 attributes. It's not obligatory to observe a sequence for the 13 attributes, but starting with existence is sensible. So now we're going to start with the Salbiyyah attributes. There are 4 or 5 of the 13 attributes called the Salbiyyah attributes. Salbiyyah means pertaining to negation. The word salb means to subtract, or to take away, or to withdraw, which means in this context to negate. So herein they will be coined the negating attributes. But if someone has a suggestion, then feel free. Inshallah, we always want to improve. Had Allah lifted the veil from the slave, these attributes would not be seen. This statement is a statement that is withheld from many beginners. When learning the 13 attributes, firstly, a person's not usually going to learn that there's categories of the 13. When you first teach a person the 13 attributes, you're just going to teach them the 13 attributes. You're not going to say, and now these 13 are broken into so many categories. This one and this one and this one. You're going to stop there. Supposing you did at some point teach a person about categorizing these attributes, and you said the attribute of existence is its own category, that's called sifat nafsiyyah, the self attribute. And then there's another category called as-sifatu salbiyyah, which is coined here as the negating attributes. You still might not offer to that person this sentence: had Allah lifted the veil from the slave, these attributes would not be seen, because this has potential for confusion. Especially for someone who's not versed in Aqidah. Had Allah lifted the veil from the slave, these attributes would not be seen, because they are Salbiyyah. They are negating, and they are not having a connotation. They are not the coming category of confirming attributes whose meanings are more than a mere self. So all that talk right there for a beginner is not clear. What does it mean? So, what validates seeing something? What validates a thing's visibility? Visibility means able to be seen. What validates a thing's visibility is its existence only, its mere existence. Validate means makes it valid, doesn't mean necessitate. Not saying because something exists we must see it, it is necessarily seen. No. We're saying if something exists, it can be seen. And anything that we see it because it exists, not for another reason. We don't see it because it has a color. We don't see it because it's a body. We don't see it because it's moving or because it's still. We don't see it because it's big or because it's whatever. None of those are the validator of seeing. The sole validator of something being visible, seeable, is existence. That's why we said, when the Mu'tazila say Allah cannot be seen, it's impossible that he be seen. When they say that, they are denying his existence, actually. But this denial of his existence is not obvious. This means one of them might deny that he could be seen without realizing that he's denying his existence. He thinks that those go together, that seeing him is impossible, yet he exists. This is a mistake in his own mind, in his own reasoning. If something exists, it can be seen. So the scholar said these attributes that we're going to talk about, these Salbiyyah attributes, had Allah lifted the veil from the slave, that means had Allah removed what prevents the slave from seeing something, these attributes still would not be seen. So then someone's going to say, you're saying they don't exist? So this is why this is a delicate topic here. That's why this sentence, you're maybe not going to offer it, even though you're teaching a person about these attributes. But because this book is advanced book and detailed book, then such statements are included. And that's why there's also, at the bottom of the page, warning. This book contains details that may confuse the reader. Knowledge is by teachers. So here we have explanation. This means that what is understood from these negating attributes is the one unique, independent, eternal self itself. Therefore, the self of God can be seen because he exists. As will come in its own chapter, seeing God. And these attributes cannot be seen because they are a negation of imperfection from the self. They are not a confirmation of existing perfections. These attributes that we're now, we're going to list them, they are a negation of imperfection. They're not a confirmation of an existing perfection. They are not confirmation of existing perfection. They are negation of imperfection. So eternity is a negation of having a beginning. So that negation of having a beginning, that's not seeable. Rather, the beginningless God is the one who will be seen, but not his beginninglessness itself, the attribute that's a negation of having a beginning, that's not seeable. Oneness is a negation of partners. So the one God will be seen, and not having a partner is not seeable. Independence is a negation of need. It's a negation of requirement. So not needing something, that meaning there is not seeable. And dissimilarity is a negation of likeness. So not being like something, this negation is not seeable. Rather, what is seeable is the confirmed, existing, independent, one, eternal, dissimilar self. So among the people are those who cannot understand this talk, and among them are those who do, and among them are those who need time for it to soak in. According to a saying, everlastingness is from this category. So then that would mean everlastingness merely means a negation of coming to an end. If everlastingness is in this category, then it only means the negation of having an end, the negation of ceasing. But the Shaykh supports the other saying that we're going to read. The author says the ma'ani attributes. The other 7 or 8. So we said the first category, Salbiyyah, is 4 or 5. They differed about everlastingness. If everlastingness is one of them, then it's 5. And then the next are only 7. And if everlastingness is one of these, then these are 8. And then the first category is only 4. So the other 7 or 8 are ma'ani, that means meanings or connotations. This word ma'na, so the word ma'ani is a plural, is the plural of the word ma'na. And the word ma'na, first thing that comes to mind from the word ma'na in terms of translating is meaning. And ma'na can mean significance. When you say it has the same significance, or it's not as significant, like saying it has the same meaning or doesn't have the same meaning. And this word ma'na can mean connotation. Connotation means something implied. Something implied from something else. That, a connotation is an extra meaning. It's a meaning that comes along with something else. It's not the fundamental meaning of a word, but it's a meaning that comes along with it. That's why we say, for example, if someone says Allah sits, then he's saying Allah is a body. And for him to say, I'm not saying he's a body, is disregarded. Because saying sit has a connotation. There's something that comes along with it. So I'm saying all of that to make you understand what the word ma'na means. Ma'na, which is the singular of ma'ani. So Allah has attributes that the scholars have categorized as ma'ani. These attributes are meanings, or other words might be used, connotations. They not only negate imperfection, they're not a mere negation of something, but they also have a connotation. They mean something more than what the self means. They mean something more than what the self means. So, for example, if you say the self of God, the statement, the self of God, quote unquote, then you understand something. But if you say the knowledge of God, then you understand something else. Not just the self, You understand the self, and you understand an attribute of this self. If you say the self of God, you're going to understand with that statement that, I'm sorry, if you say the knowledge of God, then you're going to understand from that statement that God has a self. But there's something more to that than just the self. There's a confirmed attribute. So the other 7 or 8 are aani, meanings. They not only negate imperfection, but they also have a connotation. They mean something more than what the self means. So if you have any question about that, ask please. So it is a truly existing attribute, confirming perfection for Allah, a ma'na. An attribute that's a ma'na is a truly existing attribute. It's not merely negating something. It is something confirmed, a truly existing attribute confirming perfection for Allah. Therefore, had Allah lifted the veil from the slave, i.e., had he lifted what prevents him from seeing, had Allah removed what prevents the slave from seeing, had Allah removed what blocks the slave from seeing something, in this case, these attributes could be seen without being pieces or parts. What are they? Life. This means Allah could enable you to see his attribute of life itself, because it truly exists. It's not merely a negation of something. And will, power, and knowledge. And these attributes are proven by his doings. So that's their own category. Within the ma'ani attributes, 4 of them have a category. Those that are proven by his doings. His doings here means the created things. We look at the creations around us, and then we can conclude that God is alive and he has will, power, and knowledge. And hearing, sight, and speech. And these attributes are proven by his exaltation. That means, since it's necessary that God is perfect and he's alive, he's attributed with life, and he's attributed with perfection, then we must confirm for him hearing, sight, and speech. So that's another category under the ma'ani attributes. And number 8, some said everlastingness is one of them. As Salbiyyah said in a line of poetry, Hayyun alimun qadirun wal kalamu lahu baqin sami'un basirun ma arada jara. Alive, knowledgeable, powerful, and the speech is his, everlasting, hearer, seer, whatever he willed to be is. Our Shaykh said in his big explanation of At-Tahawiyyah, for a Salbiyyah to count everlastingness with the 7, for a Salbiyyah to count everlastingness with the 7 is the supported saying, meaning everlastingness is the 8th. The one upon which is Abu Hasan al-Ash'ari himself. Al-Ash'ari himself counted everlastingness as a ma'na, not salbi. And most of his followers. This is different from what some later scholars mentioned. Like in the commentary of Al-Bayjuri, who was approximately from the 12th Hijri century. and others before him. And as I remember, that's what's in Sanusi, the Aqidah of As-Sanusi, that everlastingness is a salb, is a negating attribute. Their saying complies with the school of the Mu'tazila. Yani, that's the Mu'tazila school. The Mu'tazila said everlastingness is a negating attribute. And some of Ahlul Sunnah said it's a negating attribute. So they agreed with the Mu'tazila here. But it's important to know that if you say, this is the saying of the Mu'tazila, that doesn't mean it's wrong saying. Or this is the saying of Fulan. So says Fulan and Fulan, and the Fulaniyah and the Fulaniyah. And those might be deviant ones. Doesn't mean they're wrong. Just means this is the position they took. There could be two sayings. Like, for example, some said the mind is in the brain. This is the saying of the doctors and the saying of the philosophers, and it's the saying of some of the Muslim scholars too. And the other saying is that the mind is in the heart. And that's the saying we go by because of the proof from the Quran. And other examples like that. Shaykh says the goodness is in following the forerunners among the Imams of Ahlul Sunnah, the early ones. Subhanallah, how many benefits there are in the Shaykh's books and in the Shaykh's statements. The goodness is in following the forerunners among the Imams of Ahlul Sunnah. Digression here, but following this statement. You know, Imam An-Nawawi amongst the Shafi'is, he said the woman is obligated to cover her face. And we say this is a blunder actually, not just, he has no regard, disregarded altogether this saying. But some Shafi'is take this saying. I had a discussion with one. He said to me, yes, the early scholars didn't say that the woman is obligated to cover her face. The later ones did. We take their saying. Subhanallah wa bihamdi. What did Shaykh say? He said the goodness is in following the forerunners among the Imams of Ahlul Sunnah. That means the early ones. In the explanation of Al-Irshad, Abu al-Qasim al-Ansari said that Imam al-Haramain said that the early scholars of the school were of the opinion that lastingness or remaining is the attribute of what lasts. Lastingness or remaining is the attribute of what lasts, and it means something more than what the self means. Yani, this is to clarify the position of those who said everlastingness is a ma'na. It's not a salb. Everlastingness it has a connotation. It's not just a negation of something. What they're basically saying is, if something exists, then it exists. Yani, its existence is confirmed. Now, its existence is confirmed. What if it doesn't stop existing, though? Then it has a lastingness. It has a remainder for its existence. They are saying this lastingness, this remainder is above and beyond the existence itself. So it's not just a negation of something, it's something more than the self. They say it is of the same category of knowledge in respects to the knowledgeable. Yani, if something exists, then it exists. And if it has knowledge, then that knowledge is something more than or above and beyond the existence itself. So they're saying just like knowledge is something above and beyond the existence itself, lasting and remaining is something above and beyond the existence itself. But where you're going to get confused, possibly, is some of the words I'm choosing, like above, or beyond, or more. And there's not really a lot of words I can choose from here. So you need to understand the meaning that I'm attempting to impart on you. Allah's attributes are not pieces or parts. The Arabic term they use is zaid ala nafs or ala that. Az-zaid ala that. The word zaid means additional. Additional, added to, more than. That's what zaid means. From the word ziyada. Ziyada means extra. Addition. So they're basically saying these 7 or 8 attributes, I'm saying in crude words, they're saying they are added to the self. So then someone who's not very strong in Aqidah, but maybe not as strong as he thinks he is, you say, wait, no, you can't say that. Don't say added to here, because Allah is not someone added to. Okay. So then I'll have to say to the person, here we mean something. And I'll always say, I usually say, when it comes to the translated words, if you just want to stick to the Arabic word, you can. If you don't want to use the English word, nobody can force you. If you don't want to say added to, or in addition to, or above and beyond, or any of these words I'm using, then you don't have to. What they said in Arabic is these attributes, they are aani za'idah, ma'anin za'idah. That would translate as extra meanings, extra meanings. What they want to say is, what you understand from them is not just the self. What you understand from them is something else. And I'm saying, in relying on my ability to speak English, I'm using these words. They mean something above and beyond what's meant by the self. As opposed to the Salbiyyah attributes. When you say Allah is independent, this is not a meaning more than the self. When you say Allah is dissimilar, this is not a meaning more than the self. But when you say Allah is knowledgeable, this is a meaning more than the self. When you say Allah is dissimilar, then you understand from that the self. When you say Allah is one, then you understand from that the self. When you say Allah is powerful, you don't understand from that the self. You understand something else. So that's something else. That's what they call ma'nan za'id, an extra meaning. And so they call these attributes al-ma'ani, sifatul ma'ani, the attributes of meanings in a very literal translation. When I taught this lesson to one brother, he was ready to deem me as a kafir. He was so concerned, you should have seen the look on his face. Like maybe his mouth went dry out of nervousness, thinking that I just said a blasphemy. So don't forget, not everyone is built for these details. Not everyone is built for advancement in this field. Some people, it's enough for them just to take the basics only. If you remember, what did Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, the pious caliph at the year 100, what did he say? And he was a mujtahid, and he was a wali. What did he say when a person came to him asking him some questions in theology, in kalam? He said to that man, you see this schoolboy over there? Go learn Aqidah with him and don't ask anyone else. He said that not because the details of these matters are unimportant, not because the details of these matters are innovation or philosophy, but because some people, it's because the details of these matters are like a strong current. They are like water with a strong current. And not everyone is a proficient swimmer. Who can swim in a strong current? Only a strong swimmer can swim in a strong current. Sheikh Samir told us about a story involving Imam Ahmed, that a person knew Imam Ahmed, and he invited Imam Ahmed to a lesson that was being held in his house. One of the scholars would come to his house and give a lesson. And so Imam Ahmed came, and he didn't sit in the audience. He sat somewhere where it wasn't known that he was there. So this scholar gave his lesson. So at the end of the lesson afterwards, Imam Ahmed was crying. And the person asked him, what do you think? Imam Ahmed told him his lesson was beautiful. And don't go into this. I'm paraphrasing. He still advised him against going so far. So maybe some of you in the audience now, you're listening, this is far for you. And maybe some of you, it's clear for you. Whichever one's your case, be mindful. Now you got this knowledge, you took it. If it's not very clear for you, don't go passing it, because it means likely you're going to say something wrong. If it is clear for you and you're able to express it clearly, think twice before you give it to someone, not because it's wrong or bad, but because you don't want to be a fitna for someone. Sometimes some truth is fitna for a person. Can't handle it. He can't handle it. Ibn Furak conveys that Al-Ash'ari deems it impossible that a body's qualities remain because the body remains. For if the qualities remained because the body remains, it would be impossible for them to change as long as the body is remaining. What he's saying is, Al-Ash'ari is saying, okay, we have our bodies. And we have whatever lastingness Allah gave us, which means the time we stay in existence. And we have our attributes. And the attributes we have, they have whatever lastingness Allah gave them. The lastingness of our attributes is not the lastingness of our bodies, because our attributes change while our bodies remain. So, since our bodies remain, but we gain and lose attributes, then this proves that our attributes, the remainder of our attributes, the lastingness of our attributes is not the lastingness of our bodies. The lastingness of our bodies is different from the lastingness of our attributes. We find bodily qualities that switch and change, although the body remains. So this proves that the body's remainder is not the quality's remainder. It's not the property's remainder. But Allah is not like His creations, so what do we say? On the other hand, it is valid that the attributes of Allah remain by the everlastingness of His self. Since the Creator's attributes remain by an everlastingness that must necessarily exist because of His existence, it would not be valid for those attributes to change and switch, though the Creator remains. So what he's saying is, Allah Ta'ala, He's different from the creations. The explanation for God and His attributes is different from the explanation for the creations with their attributes. Allah Ta'ala, he exists. Okay. And he is eternal and everlasting. Okay. And he is attributed with attributes. Yes. His attributes are eternal and everlasting. Yes. Can his attributes change? Do his attributes change? No, they do not change. Allah Ta'ala does not acquire an attribute that he didn't have before. And he does not lose an attribute that he had in eternity. Thus, it is valid that those attributes remain because of his everlastingness. Allah is everlasting, so his attributes are everlasting. Abu Hanifa said, "Lam yazal wa la yazalu bi asma'ihi wa sifatihi al-dhatiyyati wal fi'liyyah." He never ceased to be, yani he is eternal, and he shall not cease to be, and he is everlastingly named with his names and attributed with his attributes of the self and his attributes of doings. Al-Ash'ari also said that something everlasting does not have to have an attribute of everlastingness. Al-Ash'ari said something everlasting does not have to have an attribute of everlastingness. So, before I read further, as you can see, there's a lot of details about everlastingness here. So when I was compiling this information, I had a choice. I could put all this information under the chapter of everlastingness, which it was there at one stage, during one draft. All of this was under the chapter of everlastingness. But then I saw that this information helps to clarify why everlastingness is a ma'na. It's not salbi. So, for the sake of supporting the saying of the Shaykh and clarifying this position of some of Ahlul Sunnah, that everlastingness is a meaning above and beyond what is understood by the self, then I took these details and put them here under the chapter of Ma'ani attributes. So we have here this title, the Ma'ani attributes. We have a short paragraph explaining something. Here we listed these Ma'ani attributes. There's two categories of them. Those that are proven by his doings and those that are proven by his exaltation. And then there's this one that there's a difference about whether it's one of them or not. And in supporting the saying that it's one of them, these details were put here. So there's more details here just for everlastingness than the entire rest of the chapter under this heading of Ma'ani. So Al-Ash'ari also said that something everlasting does not have to have an attribute of everlastingness. So perfect example of a statement that if you're not equipped, that makes your head spin. But this is why the science of Aqidah, if you learn it right, if you get it from pure source, clear of mistakes, and you understand it, this will sharpen your mind like, yani, I don't know what. What did Al-Ash'ari say? He said that the attributes of Allah remain by an attribute called everlastingness. But that everlastingness is the attribute of the self, and it's not an attribute of the attributes. So he has everlasting attributes, and those attributes don't have their own everlastingness. His attributes are everlasting because he has an attribute called everlastingness. His attributes are everlasting because his self is everlasting. His attributes are everlasting not because they have their own everlastingness. Therefore, something everlasting does not have to have an attribute of everlastingness. By this everlastingness, his attributes are everlasting. As for the attribute of everlastingness, so there's three things here being addressed. The self, the attribute of everlastingness, and the other attributes. The one is the self. Two is the attribute of everlastingness, and three is all the other attributes. So his self is everlasting because he has an attribute called everlastingness. And his attributes, other than everlastingness, are everlasting because his self is everlasting, not because they have their own everlastingness. And as for the everlastingness itself, it is everlasting because it is everlastingness. His everlastingness itself, it is everlastingness. But it's impossible that the everlastingness would be attributed with everlastingness. It's impossible that everlastingness is attributed with everlastingness. His everlastingness is itself everlastingness. So this talk here is correct, and it is clear of any invalid circular reasoning. It's clear of any circle, and it's clear of a beginningless chain. Do you have any questions so far?
Yeah, Sheikh,
Yes.
the bit about the body when he says that the qualities of the bodies don't remain because of the body. I don't get what that means.
Yeah. So, for example, you used to be a baby, right? Yes.
Yeah.
And so you had your attributes as a baby. It's still the same body. If you didn't know, then know that the body you have now is the same body that came out of your mother. But what happened to your attributes as a baby? They're gone now. So they didn't remain, although your body remained. So that's what he's saying. The lastingness of attributes is not because of the lastingness of the body.
What makes them last then?
I don't know. But it's not the body, because had it been the body, then they would not have gone away. You would still be a baby.
Yeah, I get that bit, but it's like the question I'm asking is if they're remaining, then what's their remainingness actually?
I don't know. I didn't take it. I didn't hear it.
Okay.
Yes, but it's not the lastingness of the body. It's something else. What is that? I don't know. But for sure, it's not the lastingness of the body itself. The people of the truth have confirmed that these attributes are more than or beyond being a mere self. This means that one does not understand merely the self when mentioning these attributes. He understands something beyond that. When life or knowledge is mentioned, what one understands about them is more than what he understands by self. Let's read this subsection here. Pertinence. Some of these attributes have a ta'alluq, a pertinence, a relation, or relevance. Power and will pertain to or relate to or are relevant to only other than Allah. They are relevant to what is controlled and what is meant, meaning power pertains to what is controlled and will pertains to what is meant. Because their wazifa, their function, is ta'thir. The function of these attributes is effect, because Allah creates by these attributes. And they pertain to the existent and the non-existent. Not only to the existent, his power and his will pertain to or relate to the non-existent too. How's that? Because he brings existence from nothingness. He raises something into being from nothingness altogether. So then this proves that his power and his will are related to the non-existent. Knowledge pertains to what is known, whether existent or not. So also what's known pertains to what exists and what doesn't exist. Meaning you can know what, let me not say you can. We're talking about the attributes of Allah. Meaning what is non-existent can be known. And what is existent can be known. And we just said, what is non-existent is subject to God's power and will. And what is existent, created things we mean, is subject to God's power and will. So power, will, and knowledge, all of them relate to what exists and what doesn't exist too. Hearing and sight pertain to the heard and seen, which must be existing exclusively, as opposed to what is known. So hearing and sight are not like knowledge in terms of pertinence. Hearing and sight are not like knowledge in terms of pertinence, because knowledge pertains to what exists and what does not exist, while hearing and sight pertain only to what exists. So we don't say Allah sees something that doesn't exist. We don't say Allah hears something that doesn't exist. But we do say Allah knows something that doesn't exist. And we do say Allah has power over the non-existent. And also, even what I'm saying in English, if I were to translate it into Arabic, doesn't work. As I said, something that doesn't exist. You wouldn't say in Arabic, shay'un laysa mawjudan. Something that doesn't exist. Because shay means existing. So they would say in Arabic, amrun la wujuda lahu. A matter or an issue that doesn't have any existence. They wouldn't say shay'un, something that doesn't have any existence. I tried to match the Arabic as much as I can. So that slipped out of me. I just realized what I was saying. Speech pertains to what is mentioned, what is told, what is said, what is spoken. And that also could exist or not exist. And life does not pertain to anything. And if you want to bear with me, we're a little bit over the time. Let's finish this last subsection here, the nawiyyah attributes, before we go to the next topic. Some scholars said that it is an obligation to know 20 attributes of Allah. The Sheikh said the first saying, which is the obligation of knowing 13 only, has more weight, because anyone who understands the 7 or 8 connotations will understand these. This means if you learn those 7 or 8 meanings, then these 7 or 8 that we're going to mention now, you won't miss them. So to say that you're obligated to learn this additional 7 or 8 is a weaker saying. In fact, they are called nawiyyah because they are named after the aani attributes. So if you know the aani attributes, you're not going to miss the nawiyyah attributes. And they are being powerful, being a willer, being alive, being knowledgeable, being a speaker, being a hearer, and being a seer. It's important here to mention the adjectives, not the verbs. The Mu'tazila confirmed these. but they negated the ma'ani attributes. So this is the angle that those scholars had in dealing with Mu'tazila, repelling the fallacies of the Mu'tazila. So the Mu'tazila confirm his being powerful and being a willer and being alive and being knowledgeable, etc. But they deny his attribute of power itself and will and life and knowledge. Because they say he's a willer by himself, not by will. He's a hearer by himself, not by hearing, etc. He's a knower by himself, not by knowledge. That's blasphemy. The Mu'tazila confirmed these, but they negated the ma'ani attributes. Ahlul Sunnah said Allah must be attributed with will, power, life, knowledge, hearing, sight, and speech, or else it would not be valid for him to be ascribed with these nawiyyah attributes. By negating the ma'ani attributes, those Mu'tazila have necessarily negated the nawiyyah attributes. And negating the ma'ani attributes is blasphemy. Allah knows best. We'll stop there. Do you have any question?
Sheikh, what's understood from the ma'nawiyyah that's not understood from the ma'ani?
The self that has the attribute.
The self that has the attribute.
Yeah, because it's an adjective. So if you take it back to language, you have source nouns, that's masdar, and you have verbs, and you have sifat. Talking linguistically here. Sifat means adjectives. Attribute has a wide range of all sorts of, Arabic has wide range of all sorts of adjectives. You know, they have the fa'il, that's doer. They have maf'ul, that's receiver. They have other attributes too, other adjectives too, other types. Okay. So the source noun, the masdar, what is it? It is the name of the act. It's not the doer, and it doesn't address any time. So if you say ilm, that's a source noun. Ilm, knowledge. This by itself doesn't mean the doer, nor does this by itself have any indication of time. So it's that type of word. If you say, before that, now from this source noun, well, I'm calling it a source noun because you're going to get everything else from here. You extract everything else from here. So from the source noun, you're going to extract verbs. So you would say alima. Now, when you say alima, it has the meaning of that source noun with something extra, which is the time in which it was done, which happens to be the past here. If you say ya'lamu, then you have the meaning of the source noun, but with something extra, which is the time in which it was done, the past, the present, or the future. And you can extract from this source noun adjectives. So you could say alim. So now this has the meaning of the source noun ilm, but with something extra, which is the one who has it, but not what time it was done, though. So when you say alim, this is the one who has it. When you say ilm, it's just the act itself only. When you say ma'lum, known, this is the one who received it. So if you can understand these differences, then you'll see where's the issue coming from. So what the Mu'tazila are doing is they're negating the source nouns while they're confirming the adjectives that would come from them. You understand?
Okay, correct. So the ma'anawiyyah, they have the meaning that the self is the one with the attribute, whereas the ma'ani, that gives the connotation of the attribute itself.
Yes.
And you can't. Got it.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't really, in reality, you can't separate those, but they do.
Yeah.
Linguistically, they are separate because each one has its own meaning. But in reality, not just language, you can't separate them. If there is knowledge, there would have to be a knower. And if there were a knower, there would have to be knowledge.
Thanks a lot, Sheikh.
Huh?
I said thank you very much. I needed that.
You're welcome. No. But for language purpose, you can separate them so that you can assign the meanings. So you say, okay, this one, we're just going to assign this word, we're just going to assign for the act, the name of the act, without who did it or received it or what time it was done or anything else. And we want another word that has this meaning, but with the time. And we want another word that has this meaning, but with who has it. And another word that has this meaning, but with who received it, etc. This is also going to be what we're talking about right now. This is going to be very important for the upcoming chapter, the attribute of doing. Understanding this is what's going to make the difference between the Ash'aris and the Maturidis clear. We're going to read all of that, inshallah. Because I'm just going to give you a teaser here. Because what are they going to say? The Maturidis are going to say, Allah is Khaliq in eternity. So then he must have Khalq in eternity. Or they're going to say Allah is Fa'il, doer, in eternity. So he must have Fi'l in eternity, doing. And the Maf'ul, the done thing, is created. The Ash'aris are going to say, how would he be Fa'il in eternity? That would mean there's a Fi'l in eternity. And if there's a Fi'l in eternity, that must mean there's a Maf'ul in eternity. There can't be a Maf'ul in eternity. And then from here, they're going to debate. For you.
Yes, Sheikh. I did have a question.
Yes.
MashaAllah, you mentioned earlier about connotations, and you gave a good example about the one who says that Allah sits and we say to him, or because of the connotation of that, what else you have to say, it does not matter.
Yes.
Okay, so my question is, in the English language, my understanding is that a person can use the term sitting without talking about physicality or a body, rather referring to the status. Like someone might say, oh, you're sitting pretty right now, meaning he's in a good spot. Or, oh, he's sitting in the catbird seat, meaning, you know what that means.
Yes. Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right. And the example of sitting is only because of translating the Arabic example, which is the julus. So julus in Arabic means that something has folding parts. Something has a top and a bottom and folding parts. That's how julus in Arabic is going to, that's what it means. But then gets translated into English, but sitting, like where I could say in English, I'm sitting my microphone on the floor. I'm sitting my pen on the floor. If that's valid, by the way, if that's valid. If it's valid to say, I'm sitting my pen on the floor. Or to say to someone, sit the pen on the floor. In Arabic, you wouldn't say, qalami yajlis ala al-ard. My pen is sitting on the ground. Wouldn't say.
MashaAllah, barakallahu feekum.
Ameen wa feek. So then we need, for English, we need a good example that doesn't have a criticism, inshallah. Barakallahu feekum. Wa subhanallahi wa bihamdih.